What's good? We're back. It's been a while. Hero of Hell here. It's Shamu and Jack, and we've got a special video for you. We got an interview from Fujimoto Sensei on April 21st, 2021, and we want to just go over some of the stuff that he talked about. It's actually a pretty quick interview, so we won't keep it for too long, but let's get into it.
Yeah, he touches on some interesting topics, but right into it. First question was basically, how much of the story and plot did Fujimoto have planned out in advance?
So Fujimoto says that, he had the rough outline for it and he kind of just went in along the way. He didn't really have callbacks, even though some of the callbacks that he's made, especially the smell thing or the bite or the chupla candy, has been resonating from early on in the chapters, from chapters 10 to all the way to 90. So it's hard to know what he actually planned out and what he didn't plan out because it feels seamless, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the way to go in terms of like how an artist would approach something. If you plan it out too much, it's too tight, right? It feels like you're trying to do too much. But if you let it organically build out over the long run, that's why it turned out so good. But today we have we did some work to give you guys what we think was planned and not planned. So you go first. What was planned in your opinion?
So I think the ball smashing was planned in the Katana Man arc because it is the perfect payoff to Himeno. And it calls back a famous scene from Hunter x Hunter, which I won't get into spoiler territory, but a Requiem was a perfect callback. So I feel like Fujimoto wanted to put it in and he got away with it.
Okay, so my plan is similar, but not that. It is actually the Himeno puke scene. And the reason I said that is because it's such a striking visual and it was early enough in the story that I think that he had it in his mind that he wanted to do a kiss, but a kiss like you've never seen before. And so I think
that's true. Unplanned? I think Kobeni's not the dancing part, but her burger scene when she's in the family in the McDonald's or whatever that version is in our story.
That's a good
her
one.
tripping 3 times. No way that he had that. I think he thought of that just on the fly.
Yeah, agreed. It's kind of weak to think of something like that as something that he wanted to do like early on, since Kobeni is such a minor character, but it's such a tense chapter.
Okay, and she's just tripping and falling.
Exactly, just ridiculous. Okay, for me, Power's vulnerability. I don't think that was planned because Power is just such a dorky character that her PTSD after the Darkness Devil, I think that was like a touch of something that he got inspiration from, and then he built upon it in future chapters. He was filling in at that time when he was doing it, not wanting to be alone, like being with Aki and Denji at night and taking a shower with Denji, like pooping, all that stuff. Take effect. I think all of that was, if you compare like the relationships of how Aki felt about them, like once he had a chance to do it, I think he really went for it. So that was unplanned.
Yeah.
Next question they had was, why do people say CSN is jump-like, but not at the same time? What was the pitch that he made to the jump editors?
So it looks like the characters were jump-like and the structure was jump-like, but everything outside of that was not jump-like. And just calling back to some of his planned and unplanned scenes, right? Like the kiss is it's not very jump-like. It's something that clearly subverts the expectations of weekly Shonen Jump readers, right?
Yeah, it's incredibly subversive, and I think that we got a lot of hits of it from the start. Like early on, I was on Twitter saying, commenting that the trope of touching a girl's boobs, he totally turns it on its head, where he gets to do it immediately, and it's nothing like he wanted. This is not like one of those other mangas where accidentally touch whatever, right? He does it, he hates it. It's completely, you wouldn't expect that. There's no love there even, there's no infatuation with this girl. She's always pooping, all that stuff isn't there. And just with the Himeno character, the kiss. He finally got a kiss. He got puke in his mouth. He could have got laid. He doesn't want it. Like all this stuff is completely subversive. So that's what he was going for.
Mm-hmm.
In all of the jump-like things, he turns it on its head. All right, next question is why part 1 and part 2 format?
So he says that he wants to have 2 or maybe 3 very distinct stories, which is interesting because of how he kind of frames the story, right? It was always super fast-paced, and this entire public safety arc was centered around Denji learning about public safety and himself. So giving that break, having that separation into a new part, especially on a slightly different platform, is a pretty smart move.
I think what we see with a lot of Jump edit authors is that they get bored. And I think this is how Fujimoto is doing it, where he wants to tell like a story and then changes up the situation so that he's good for another 100 chapters. I think this is a better way of problem solving. We see a lot of authors that either end it, like Demon Slayer, relatively soon, which is a good idea. But with some other manga as of this recording, you know, they're wanting to end because they're probably bored after 10 years of it, you know? Mm-hmm. Not everyone is.
And I think.
So let's actually branch this out a little bit longer. We've mentioned off air about Tokyo Ghoul having a format like this, and this is different than Dragon Ball or these other ones with spin-offs. Like a lot of these spin-offs are just to make money. No one cares about the spin-offs that much, right? But Tokyo Ghoul is similar to Chainsaw Man in a lot of ways, like horror style, unique, and it also required a part 1 to start it and a part 2 to finish it in.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts, since you're a Tokyo Ghoul fan, what were your thoughts while you were reading it live at the time of like when they did part 1 and part 2? And I'll follow up with when I read it as like a full reread.
Yeah, without too many spoilers, the end of part 1 is pretty shocking, like pretty freaking shocking, and it kind of works well as the end, right? Like we didn't know if we were going to get a part 2. Like we were like, all right, well, we're done. That's cool, nice. This is a really great series. I mean, I would have loved to see more of it, but I guess, oh well. And then we got the announcement of part 2 literally a couple months later, which is awesome. And that stretched out the series for a little longer. And some of the arcs in Re and the artwork in Tokyo Ghoul Re are fire. And I'm glad that we got that edition, but you can kind of treat each part as its own story. I mean, it's cool. I'm glad that Fujimoto is also doing something similar to this, but yeah. Your thoughts? I know you binged it pretty recently, so it's a much different experience.
And I had, you know, outside of the story, I'm just commenting on part 1 and part 2 formats. They were different. And one was when they were still going to school a lot. That was the concept. The second part was like they were adults. And you saw them as adults. And the people that they hung out with were adults and they did adult things. So I think it's very similar, and rereading it as like a catch-up, like it worked. So I think, you know, CSM will be fine as it is for those people who read it after this initial run live, you know. So I think it's a great thing to just do the change of pace. So next question is, was there any manga inspirations for CSM?
There's so many, too many, unbelievably many. Fujimoto has literally read every single Weekly Shonen Jump, canceled and ongoing. He reads a lot of manga, TV, and I think the big one, he's mostly a movie junkie for sure. Especially with all the volumes, if anyone has any physicals or has read any of the physicals, he mentions at least one movie in each of the volume beginnings, and he references a bunch of them within the chapters as well.
So in art, there's a famous quote of some sorts where they say like, for you to really redefine art, you have to know it first. And so I think that's what you're talking about. Fujimoto knows Shonen Jump inside out. He loves it. He loves it so much that he is actually talented enough to subvert it. Like he knows what he's doing here. He's like a scalpel, right? He's like, oh, this is what boob touching means to you, I will turn it like this. And like, you want
Yeah.
to kiss? I'll show you a kiss, 2 pages worth of a kiss.
Yeah.
And like, so that's what he's doing.
A firework festival? Like, nah.
Exactly. And the movie references is, I think he's doing it more than almost anyone. I mean, but he's taking like the finer points where Oda is just taking like the ideas of like Vikings or Games of Thrones dragons, like bringing to his art. I think that CSM is doing smaller, more horror elements that are detailed, I think, or specific.
Yeah. So many movies like Caroline, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all of these, he finds a way to try to bring him in and put his own spin on it, which is, you know, the most important part.
He doesn't try to like copy mediums because like you said, you can't. But he does, he brings innovation to his paneling and stuff like that. Like the doorbell ring scene with the key, all those sound effects, the hecticness, the art of what he showed as hell. I mean, those are the things you can't show in the movies.
Yeah.
In the same way, you know, just ink and paper really showed like some things that you can't see. Okay, another question is, what is the difference between Jump and Jump Plus based on Fire Punch, his experiences on Fire Punch and CSN?
So Fujimoto claims that there isn't much of a difference. Like some stuff he wanted to do but didn't make it past. But I mean, we've both read Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man, right? Like there's a clear difference in the tone and what he actually explores.
If that stuff got in, what did they take out of Fire Punch as well?
Yeah.
My lord. They got the, I mean, I can't even believe that I'm saying this, but they got scissoring in a color page. Can you imagine? Like they're at the annual Jump party where all the authors are hanging out with each other and they're like, Fujimoto, what is this?
Yo, I love Quincy. Like
what is going on here? Yeah, so
right? I mean, there's that. There's both the girls in lingerie as a cover page. It's crazy because I think the difference you can tell between Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man is that cannibalism is brought up in very early in Fire Punch and it's brought up very late in Chainsaw Man. Like,
yeah, I wonder how much deeper he's going to go into cannibalism. He's done it a lot. So now that it was a main punchline after part 1, I wonder if he's going to back off of it a little bit. I mean, Denji's not going to defeat every enemy by eating it. I mean, that would just be repetitive, and Fujimoto would get bored of that.
Yeah.
So next question, the final question was, what are his thoughts on the anime?
So he basically says that, you know, he's not an animator, right? He's like, you know, I talked to them. It's cool. I kind of just want to let them do their thing. I'm sure he is hopeful and wants it because he does watch in a good amount of anime too. I remember in some of their mangaka musings, he would say like, yeah, I was like throwing on this season of blah, blah, blah while I was, you know, drawing the chapter. It was very fun. So he's definitely an anime fan.
I think for me, they got the right studio to do it. I just hope they take it over the line. I think that's really the best way you can go with this. If it's too soft, people don't like it. This is something that people already understand what they're getting into, and it's flying off the shelves, right? I mean, within the first 2 graphic novels, tankobons, whatever you want to call it,
volumes.
You got one person puking into another's mouth, right? And yet this thing is selling like hotcakes. Where is the line? And they need to completely cross it, I think, or at least cross it just as much as the printed versions can and what you can get away with on air. Exactly. And so we're about to see what that means.
Yeah, hopefully that it gets, you know, a late time so they can get away with more stuff. Hopefully, you know, there's enough episodes. We don't know exactly what the release cycle. We're getting a promotional video, I think in July or in June. So we have a couple months until then. Obviously, we'll be covering it here, and whenever the anime comes, we'll also be covering it on this channel to whatever extent.
I mean, I've seen some really creative anime, and rarely does it go that way, so I'm not expecting that much.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I've seen like them cut from anime to like stop motion type, like paper cutout type things. I mean, I love that type of stuff. And with Chainsaw Man, I wish Like I'm kind of imagining like Into the Spider-Verse here, but not 3D, just like rough,
Yeah.
like kind of like the chainsaw buzzing, like shaking energy type things.
Yeah.
So I don't really think that they're gonna go that route, just because
Probably
this is
not.
the main type manga. But if they did, and I mean, so you've seen how Shonen Jump and Viz will release some of the YouTube stuff for it, and it's fairly unique, like the choir, like
It
the
is.
horror.
Yeah.
I mean, if Fujimoto is not out there pushing them to do really outrageous things that haven't been done before,
Yeah. Or pitching those ideas, it shows that people understand the style that Fujimoto is going with, especially with those videos. On top of the music and that choir is the way that the color kind of like bleeds into the pages. It looks really good. And I mean, we'll see what happens come fall, winter, maybe next year, whenever this anime comes.
So that's it for the interview.
Yeah, that's all we got. We do have a Nauta video in the works. It'll be out whenever it's ready, but look out for it. If you guys have any questions centered around Nauta, if you read,
Naita is the one shot he did a few years back.
Exactly.
Kind of like that looks like a conceptual mirror to Naita in the Chainsaw Man story. So we're gonna just talk about it as an exercise.
Yeah, and one cool thing is if you guys do speak Japanese or understand Japanese, they did do a 2-part series on YouTube that shows a Japanese dubbing of the one shot. So that is available. We'll link it in the description down below. And we'll see you guys in the next time. Let us know. Peace.